Good evening, everybody. So it is Friday, October 16th, and this is the beginning of what I'm told is Old Fashioned Week. And I haven't made an Old Fashioned for you yet, so I'm going to make an Old Fashioned. The Old Fashioned is supposed to be the first ever cocktail. I'm sure it's not, but that's what its claim to fame is. It was described as early as 1806. Which back then it was described as being strong spirit, sugar, bitters, and water. And sometime in the late 1800s, it became known as just whiskey cocktail. So it's whiskey, sugar, bitters, and sometimes water. It's a debate as to whether it's actually should have water in it. I think most people do make it with water if you use an actual sugar cube, which is what I'm going to do. You can also use simple syrup instead, in which case you don't have to bother dissolving or muddling the sugar cube, and you get a little smoother consistency. But I kind of like the sugar, a little bit of granulated sugar left in the drink, and so it's a pretty simple drink to make. But it's one of those drinks that people say is a way to test whether your bartender's a good bartender or not, is to order an old fashioned. So
we're going to find out just how
we're going to find out if I'm any good. Maybe I suck, and I just I just think I know what I'm doing when I really don't. So you can use any kind of whiskey you like. Bourbon or rye are the most common ones. I'm going to use bourbon, and the bourbon that I'm going to use is Smuggler's Notch bourbon, made right here in Jeffersonville, Vermont. And I could probably do a half-hour dissertation on bourbon. Some people think that it can't be bourbon if it's made in Vermont, that bourbon has to be made in Kentucky. Not true at all. Bourbon is more of a description of the ingredients used to make the mash. It needs to be at least 50 or 51% corn, and it needs to be made somewhere in the United States. Obviously, Kentucky is known for its bourbon. The best bourbon in the world comes from Kentucky, but I really like Smuggler's Notch bourbon and pretty much anything that they make, and it's nice to have local distillers that we can use. So I'm going to make our old fashioned. So I've got if you want a nice sturdy old fashioned glass here, or double old fashioned glass, and you want to use a sugar cube, and my horse folks, they've all got these lying around, so they have sugar cubes. You drop a sugar cube into each glass, and then you want bitters, Angostura bitters, and you want to soak the sugar cube with the bitters. So it's about 3 dashes of bitters, but you want to get them 1, 2, 3 right on the sugar cube if you can. 1, 2, 3, and there you go.
Commercial.
And there's always a commercial, and why not? Come on. Anyway.
Technical difficulties.
Yes, major technical difficulties. So I've got my
the music was good.
bitters. It was, and I got to get my iPad to play along here, and it doesn't seem to want to let me in. It doesn't recognize my finger.
Oh.
Anyway, so sugar cube with our bitters. And then the debate over whether or not you need to use any water. I think you do need a little bit of water to dissolve the sugar cube, so I'm just going to put a few drops in there on the sugar cube just to soften it up a little bit. Then I'm going to muddle it just to dissolve it some. Kind of stir it around, mash it up a little bit. Just to get it right in there. Then we want our bourbon. Actually, before we put in the bourbon, we put in our ice. So I'm going to use these large ice balls, which you can buy these molds online, or some of the local stores might have them as well. And I want 2 ounces of bourbon for your old fashioned. Brand new bottle, so it goes glug glug.
How does it go?
Glug glug.
Savage.
Glug. And then you want to give it a little stir to dissolve up and mix around the sugar a little bit. Excuse me. I'm acting like I've already had 3 or 4 of these and I haven't. Stir those up with our bar spoon. There we go. And then I always forget something, and this time I forgot my garnish. So, struggling. So you want to garnish it. Some people garnish it with a cherry. Some people garnish it with an orange slice. That's kind of a very 70s innovation. So because the Old Fashioned is such an old cocktail, it's been around for well over 200 years, it's evolved. There are lots and lots of variations, and maybe we'll get into some of those variations over the next week. Some people think that you actually muddle an orange slice and a cherry in the glass, and other people say that's just fruit salad and that's ridiculous. So you want a little lemon twist, so got a thin bit of lemon there. I'm gonna shoot it around and drop it in. We need another one.
Is that what the whip is?
The whip is muddled
With the orange and
with
the cherry?
orange, and I don't think they muddle a cherry. I think it's just orange, maple syrup. They muddle the orange slice in maple syrup. And but yeah, the whip is basically an Old Fashioned.
Oh.
The whip, for those of you who don't live around here, the whip is the signature drink of the Whip Bar and Grill in Stowe at the Green Mountain Inn at the base of Route 108, right in the middle of Stowe Village. So there's our Old Fashioned with a twist. Cheers to Old Fashioned Week.
My first.
There you go. You've never had an Old Fashioned before?
I think so.
It's basically bourbon, so you want to use good bourbon. There you go. It's the
Guess
very
you know
first
what you're
cocktail.
doing.
You think I know what I'm doing?
At least you're good at faking it.
Well, you know, you just got to commit. Cheers, everybody.